Hey everyone, and welcome to today's Explainer. Today we're putting on our cognitive science hats to explore a genuinely fascinating study by Songzi Wu and colleagues from Dartmouth College and Columbia University. As a psychology professor, I spend a lot of time thinking about how the human mind processes pain and how we eventually reconcile with each other. And what we're looking at today is a piece of research that fundamentally challenges everything we thought we knew about holding grudges. It's a groundbreaking theory on how forgiveness literally, physically, alters our memories.
So we've all heard the old saying, right? Forgive and forget. It's one of those phrases that's just totally dominated self-improvement and relationship advice for, well, centuries. We're constantly told that to truly move on from being wronged, we have to wipe the slate completely clean. But from a strict neuroscience perspective, does the human brain actually erase the tape of a painful memory? Does the memory of someone hurting you just vanish into thin air?
Here's our agenda for today's lecture. We are going to cover 1. The myth of forgive and forget. 2. The fMRI forgiveness experiment. 3. The role of mentalizing. 4. Updating episodic memories. And finally, 5. The forgive and update theory.
Let's jump right into Section 1, Myth, Forgive and Forget.
We really need to start by tearing down that popular myth, the idea that forgiveness requires forgetting. To understand what's actually happening in our heads, we need a solid, scientific definition. Think about a time you were wronged and eventually got a really sincere apology. According to the American Psychological Association, forgiveness is the voluntary transformation of feelings, attitudes, and behavior, such that a person is no longer upset with someone who wronged them. Notice the absolute key word there. It's transformation. It definitely doesn't say deletion. It's a voluntary process where the upsetting sting completely fades away. But the event itself, that stays securely in your history.
Moving on to Section 2, the fMRI forgiveness experiment. To uncover what's going on under the hood during this transformation, researchers designed a brilliant fMRI study. Basically, they wanted to see the brain in real-time action while someone processed a transgression and then tried to forgive it. The experiment unfolded in 3 distinct phases across 2 days inside a brain scanner. First, on day 1, they had the encoding phase. This is where they simulated an interpersonal conflict. Participants were led to believe that 2 other people, let's just call them targets, deliberately selected a series of highly distressing negative images specifically for them to look at in the scanner. Then came the manipulation phase, where participants were given reasons for why those images were chosen. Finally, on day 2, the reconsideration phase. Participants returned to the scanner, viewed those exact same images again, and rated how they felt.
So, picture this. You're lying inside this massive brain scanner. On a screen, you see the faces of these targets, maybe guys named Zach and Alex, paired directly with the really distressing images they supposedly picked out just for you. We're talking pictures of great white sharks or, a really creepy bug. Now, knowing the guy on the screen intentionally picked out a giant insect just to make you squirm is inherently a little absurd, but honestly, it worked perfectly to create a solid baseline of negative emotion. It created a real, measurable interpersonal grievance.
Then came the twist during the manipulation phase. Participants were shown messages from the targets explaining their choices. One target offered a super sincere apology. They explained they had had a terrible day, their boss yelled at them, and they unfairly took it out on the participant. The control target, though, completely nonchalant. They basically said, "I'm not sure why I chose those. I guess I just sort of went with my gut. Gee, thanks a lot, right?" Participants were then instructed to actively try to forgive the apologetic target while looking at their images, or to merely look at the images from the nonchalant target.
The behavioral data from this is incredibly telling. Actively trying to forgive the apologetic target absolutely worked. It successfully reduced negative feelings right then and there. But what's really amazing is that this emotional relief persisted all the way into day 2 during the reconsideration phase. The participants felt significantly less upset by the images on the second day, proving that the act of forgiveness effectively dampened the negative experience, way above and beyond just getting used to seeing the pictures.
Which brings us to Section 3, the role of mentalizing.
So the behavioral data proves forgiveness works, but what exactly is happening to that traumatic memory inside the actual architecture of your brain? When researchers looked at the fMRI data, they found intense activity in a specific region called the right dorsomedial prefrontal cortex, or RDMPFC for short. In psychology, this region is famous for being the hub of our mentalizing network. Mentalizing is just the cognitive process we use to infer other people's thoughts and intentions. It's how we step into someone else's shoes. By reading the sincere apology, participants fired up this network to empathize with the transgressor, realizing, Okay, this person just had a really bad day. They didn't do this out of pure malice.
Okay, Section 4. Updating episodic memories.
Here's the thing, though. Empathy and mentalizing alone aren't quite enough to create a lasting change. The brain actually has to take that newly generated empathy and physically alter the traumatic memory's original code. And this is the crucial part. That mentalizing data from the prefrontal cortex gets sent straight to the posterior hippocampus. You can think of the posterior hippocampus as your brain's hard drive for fine-grained episodic memories. It takes the new info, the apology and your empathy, and acts exactly like a software patch. It literally overwrites and updates the original painful memory file with the brand new context.
To prove this software patch is actually a real physical process, researchers used some really advanced techniques to measure the neural patterns. When forgiveness was truly effective, meaning participants felt way less upset on day 2, the neural pattern of their brain practically matched the exact pattern measured on day 1 when they were actively forgiving. The empathy was physically integrated into the memory trace. Compare that to ineffective forgiveness, where the patterns didn't match at all. If it didn't match, the software patch basically failed to install, and the memory wasn't successfully updated.
Finally, Section 5. Forgive and update theory. This whole interconnected neurological dance brings us to the ultimate conclusion of our lecture today. We're looking at a brand new paradigm. We now know, scientifically, that the brain simply does not erase negative experiences. We don't just forget. Instead, when we get a sincere apology, it triggers our mentalizing network. We understand the wrongdoer's perspective. Then, the hippocampus patches the original memory with that empathy. The memory itself stays completely intact. You definitely still remember what happened, but the emotional sting associated with it is permanently dialed down.
As Wu and colleagues so perfectly summarize in their research, it's not forgive and forget. The new paradigm is forgive and update. And honestly, this is a vital evolutionary mechanism. It's absolutely essential for repairing and maintaining human social bonds. We don't wipe the slate clean. We revise the record so we can actually reconcile and continue living together. So as we wrap up today's explainer, I want to leave you with a very practical question to think about. How can you use this neurological software patch to finally update a heavy grudge you've been carrying around? The next time someone apologizes to you, remember that you aren't actually being asked to just miraculously forget what happened. You're just being given the data you need to run a mental update. Thanks so much for joining me today, and as always, keep learning.